Some betrayals do not happen in moments of anger. They happen in silence. My mother thought I would never know what she did. But the truth has a way of finding its way home. There are evenings that feel so calm and perfect that you almost do not want to move. The kind of evening where even one deep breath might break the peace. That was one of those evenings. The light from the setting sun came through my mother's lace curtains and filled the room with a soft golden color. The air smelled like lavender and old books. It was the scent that always reminded me of her house. The radio was playing a slow old song, and I could hear the soft sound of dishes from the kitchen. It was Sunday, the only day of the week when the whole family came together. My brother Mark, my sister Elise, and I sat around the same long oak table we had known all our lives. That table had seen our laughter, our birthdays, and more secrets than any of us would ever admit. My mother sat at the head of the table. Her hair was silver now, tied neatly in a bun. Her hands were folded gently on the table, the same hands that once held us when we were small. She smiled as she looked at us. It was a quiet smile, the kind that shows peace. She looked happy, content, as if nothing in the world could break this moment. Dinner felt warm and familiar. Mark was talking about his new business plans. He always spoke with confidence, just like our late father used to. Elise laughed a little too much at everything he said. Her laughter sounded cheerful, but I could tell something was not right. She was pretending. Mother listened to both of them with her usual patience. Every now and then she glanced at me. Her eyes stayed soft, but there was something in them that made me feel uneasy. Maybe concern? Maybe guilt. I was not sure. Still, I smiled back at her and said nothing. In our family, we did not talk about feelings. We smiled. We changed the subject. We served dessert instead. When dinner was over, Mark said he had a phone call to take. Elise said she needed some air. It was just me and Mother left in the dining room. She asked me to stay for tea. We sat by the window that looked over her small garden. The flowers were in full bloom, bright and beautiful. The air coming through the open window was cool and gentle. Mother stirred her tea slowly. The spoon tapped against the cup in a steady rhythm. She said softly, "You have always been the patient one, the one who waits instead of demands." I smiled and told her, "You raised me that way." She looked at me for a long time before she spoke again. Her voice was quiet but serious. "Some lessons," she said, "turn out heavier than I meant them to be." I did not understand what she meant, not then. I thought she was simply being thoughtful, the way she sometimes was. But if I had understood her words that night, maybe I would have asked the questions that later kept me awake at night. The clock ticked softly on the wall. Outside, the wind moved through the trees. It carried the scent of rain that had not yet come. Mother reached across the table and held my hand. Her fingers were warm and steady. "Whatever happens," she said quietly, "remember that family is not only about love. It is about endurance." Her words stayed with me. I thought she meant the kind of endurance that comes with growing older or forgiving small mistakes. But there was something else in her voice, something she did not say out loud. When I stood up to help her clean the table, I noticed a bundle of papers near her chair. They were tied together with a silk ribbon. I thought they might be old letters or bills. When I reached for them, she quickly placed her hand over the papers. "It is nothing important," she said, smiling too quickly. I let it go. In our family, if someone said it was nothing, you believed them. We did not question each other's privacy. Still, I could not shake the strange feeling that came over me. As I washed the cups, I saw her carefully fold those papers and place them on her lap. Something about the way she did it made me uneasy. It was small, but it felt like the first small crack in something I had always believed was strong. That night, when I left her house, the sky was dark and quiet. The stars looked distant, almost cold. I turned back before getting into my car and saw her standing at the window. She was holding that same ribbon-tied bundle close to her chest. The light from the lamp behind her made her look fragile. And for a brief moment, I thought she looked afraid. I told myself I was imagining it. I told myself she was just tired. But deep inside, something had already changed. because families like ours are built on trust, and trust once broken never fully returns. It hides the scar, but the scar is always there. That night, as I drove home, the road was quiet, and all I could hear was the sound of my own thoughts. I did not know it then, but the peace that had held our family together for so long was about to end. The next few weeks passed quietly, or at least that is what it looked like from the outside. My mother still called every Sunday morning. My brother still sent his usual short messages, always polite, always busy. My sister Elise still acted cheerful when she visited. But something about her eyes had changed. They darted around the room as if they were looking for something she had lost. There was a strange stillness in our family now. The laughter that once filled the air had turned into short, polite smiles. The warmth was still there, but it felt forced. Every conversation seemed to have another meaning beneath it, like words floating on hidden water. One afternoon, I went to visit my mother again. She was sitting in the garden, her favorite spot. The sunlight touched her hair and turned it almost white. She looked peaceful, but when I came closer, I saw that her tea had gone cold. She had been sitting there for a long time, lost in thought. When she noticed me, she smiled the same way she always did. But her voice was softer than usual. "You are here," she said. "I was just thinking about you." I sat beside her. "About me? Why?" She hesitated for a moment, then shook her head. "Oh, nothing. Just a mother's thoughts." But there was something heavy in her tone. I could feel it, even if she tried to hide it. The air was warm that day, but I felt a chill run through me. The flowers in her garden were blooming, but the colors seemed duller. Even the birds were quiet. Later that evening, when we were inside, she asked if I had spoken to Mark recently. I said yes, that he had mentioned a new business deal. She looked away, her fingers tracing the rim of her teacup. "Your brother always knows how to get what he wants," she said softly. There was no anger in her voice, only a kind of tired pride. I asked what she meant, but she just smiled and changed the subject, asking about my work instead. Elise arrived soon after. She came in carrying flowers and kissed Mother's cheek. But her smile faded when she saw me sitting there. It was only for a second, but I noticed it. A small flicker of discomfort. We sat together for dinner again, but the mood was different this time. The conversation was careful. Mark talked about his plans again, but his tone carried a sense of ownership, as if he already held more power than the rest of us. Elise laughed at his jokes, but I could see that her eyes never really met his. Mother kept quiet most of the time, watching all of us with that calm, knowing look she often had. When Mark mentioned the word inheritance, I saw her hand pause in midair. She quickly put her fork down and said, "Let us not talk about money tonight." Mark smiled, but it was not a warm smile. "Of course, Mother," he said politely. "I was only speaking in general." The silence that followed was heavy. Elise looked down at her plate, and I pretended to sip my water. We all felt the tension, but none of us had the courage to name it. After dinner, when the others went into the living room, I stayed behind to help with the dishes. Mother stood next to me, drying them one by one. "Do you trust them?" I asked before I could stop myself. She froze for a moment, then placed the plate carefully on the counter. "They are my children," she said quietly. "That was not my question," I said gently. She sighed, and for the first time in years, she looked small. "A mother's love," she said slowly, "is not always returned in the same way." I did not know what to say. She wiped her hands, walked to the window, and looked out into the darkness. People change when they believe they deserve more than what life gave them. Her words stayed in the air between us. They were not directed at anyone, yet somehow they felt personal. Before I left that night, I noticed something on her writing desk, a new envelope with my name written on it. When I reached for it, she quickly placed her hand over it, just like before. "Not now," she said softly. "Soon." There was a quiet warning in her voice, but also a strange sadness. That night I could not sleep. I kept hearing her voice in my head. People change when they believe they deserve more. The next morning, Elise called me. Her tone was nervous. She said she had stopped by Mother's house early, but Mother was not feeling well. When I arrived, Mark was already there, sitting in the living room, speaking softly to our mother. They both stopped talking when I entered the room. Mother smiled, but it did not reach her eyes. "We were just discussing some family matters," she said. Mark stood up and gave me a short nod. "All good," he said, and left soon after. When he was gone, Mother sat back in her chair, looking exhausted. "Sometimes," she whispered, "peace requires silence." Her words made me uneasy. I wanted to ask her what Mark had said, but something stopped me. Maybe it was the look on her face, tired, but resolved. As I helped her back to bed, she held my hand tightly. "Do not let kindness make you blind," she said softly. "Even love needs to see the truth." That night, as I sat in my car outside her house, I realized that something had shifted inside our family. It was not loud or sudden. It was quiet, like a door closing softly behind you when you do not even notice it has been shut. The love between us was still there, but it no longer felt safe. It felt like standing on thin ice, pretending not to hear the cracks beneath your feet. I looked back at the house one more time before driving away. Through the window, I could see her sitting alone, her face lit by the small lamp on the table. The same envelope was beside her, still sealed. Whatever secret it held, I knew it was the key to everything that was coming. I just did not know that by the time it was opened, peace would already be gone. It happened quietly, almost too quietly for something that would change everything. There was no argument, no shouting, no dramatic confession. Just a moment, a still, ordinary moment, when truth decided to show its face. It was a Thursday afternoon. The sky outside was gray, the kind of gray that makes the whole house feel heavier. I had stopped by Mother's house after work, bringing her favorite apple pie. She loved it when I did that. But when I walked in, she was not in the kitchen, not even in the garden. Her voice came from the study, low, calm, but different. The door was half open. I paused. Inside, Mark was sitting across from her. His tone was soft but sharp at the edges, like someone trying too hard to sound gentle. "Mother, you need to make these changes before it is too late," he said. She was holding a piece of paper, her will. I could see it clearly even from where I stood. My stomach tightened, her voice trembled slightly. "Mark, I already told you, everything will be divided fairly. It is what your father wanted." He leaned forward. "Fairly?" His voice dropped. "You have always given her more, even when she did not deserve it." For a moment I could not breathe. He was talking about me. Mother's face remained calm, but I could hear the hurt beneath her words. "She has given me her time, Mark. You gave me your distance." "Love cannot be measured in money." Mark stood up. His chair scraped the floor. "You think I do not know how she manipulates you? How she makes you feel guilty for loving me less?" "Enough," Mother said softly. But he kept going. "You think I do not see the letters? The secret accounts? The meetings?" She froze. Her hand tightened around the paper. "What are you talking about?" He smiled, but it was cold. "Do not play innocent, Mother. You changed the will. You gave her everything. That was when I stepped inside." "Stop," I said quietly. Both of them turned. The room went still. Mark's expression hardened. "You should not be listening to private conversations. And you should not be having them behind my back," I replied. My voice was calm, but my heart was pounding. Mother looked at me, her eyes filled with confusion and sorrow. "Please," she whispered, "not like this." But it was already too late. Mark took a deep breath. "So it is true then? You are taking everything. You and your secret talks with her. Do you think you deserve it more because you play the perfect daughter?" I shook my head slowly. "I never asked for anything. You know that." He laughed, short and bitter. "No, you just let her believe you're the only one who cares. That is how you win, isn't it? Quiet pity, endless visits, making sure she depends on you." The words cut deep. Not because they were true, but because he believed them. Mother's voice was trembling now. "Mark, please stop this." But he would not. "You think she loves you unconditionally," he said, staring at me. "Wait until you find out what she kept from you." That line, that single deliberate line, made my blood run cold. "What are you talking about?" I asked. He turned away with a smirk. "Ask her." Mother's eyes filled with tears. "Mark, that is enough." He shrugged, picked up his coat, and walked out, slamming the door behind him. The silence that followed felt like the end of something sacred. Mother sank back into her chair, breathing heavily. I knelt beside her. What did he mean? She covered her face with her hands. "I was trying to protect you," she whispered. "Protect me from what?" She looked up slowly, her voice barely above a whisper. "There are things you do not know, things I hoped would stay buried." Her words struck me like ice. I reached for her hand. "You can tell me," but she shook her head. "Not now." She placed the folded will into the drawer beside her and locked it. "This is not about money," she said quietly. "It is about truth, and the price it demands." I sat there beside her, unable to speak. The ticking clock was the only sound in the room. That night, I could not get his words out of my mind. "Wait until you find out what she kept from you." It felt like poison slowly spreading through my thoughts. Every conversation, every glance, every hesitation from my mother began to replay in my mind. The next day, I went back to her house, but she was resting. Elise was there, sitting in the living room. Her eyes were red, as if she had been crying. "What happened?" I asked. She hesitated. "Mark told me something." My chest tightened. "What did he say?" She looked at me, guilt flickering in her eyes. "He said Mom changed the will weeks ago." "He said you already knew." I stepped back. "That is not true." "I did not think it was," she said quietly. But the way he said it, he sounded so certain. We both stood there in silence, two sisters caught between loyalty and fear. Later that evening, I went into Mother's study again. She was asleep in her chair, the soft glow of the lamp falling across her face. The drawer where she had locked the will was slightly open. I do not know why I did it, but I reached for it. Inside was the document, folded neatly, and beneath it, a letter addressed to me. My hands trembled as I opened it. Her handwriting was shaky, but the words were clear. "My dear child, if you are reading this, it means the truth has already started to surface. I never wanted you to learn it this way. I changed the will not because I loved you more, but because I owed you what I could not give before, the truth about your father and about Mark." I stopped reading. My breath caught in my throat. The truth about my father? About Mark? The room felt smaller. My heart was beating so hard I could hear it echoing in my ears. I read the next line. "Mark was not only your brother, he was your father's secret before he was mine to raise." The letter fell from my hand. The sound it made when it hit the floor felt like the world breaking. All those years. The difference in how she treated him. The silence, the guilt. It all made sense now. I sank to the floor, my body shaking. The air felt too heavy to breathe. My life, my memories, my love for my family. Everything had changed in a single moment of truth. Mother stirred in her chair, unaware that the storm had finally broken. And I realized that sometimes betrayal does not arrive with anger or noise. Sometimes it arrives with love and the unbearable weight of truth you were never meant to carry. The days that followed were heavy and blurred, like living underwater. Every sound, every memory, every breath felt muffled by what I had learned. The letter lay hidden in my drawer, but its truth lived inside me, pulsing like an open wound that refused to close. Mother did not know that I had read it. She moved through the house as though nothing had changed. She made tea in the mornings, watered her plants, and hummed softly while watching the birds outside her window. But between us there was a silence that spoke louder than any words could. I wanted to confront her. I wanted to ask her why she had carried such a secret for so long. But each time I looked at her, at the fragility in her hands, the tremor in her voice, I could not do it. Love, even when bruised, has a way of holding you back from causing more pain. Mark, on the other hand, had disappeared for a few days. No calls, no messages, only rumors from Elise that he was staying with a friend. She tried to sound calm when she said it, but I could hear the worry in her tone. At dinner one evening, Mother looked up from her plate. "We should talk," she said, my stomach twisted. "About what?" Her eyes softened. "About your brother," I froze. She still called him my brother. "After everything," she continued, "I know things have been tense. He said things he should not have. But I want you both to find a way back." I stared at her, unable to hide the hurt in my voice. "A way back to what, Mother? To pretending?" She sighed. "You do not understand—" "No," I interrupted quietly. "I understand more than you think." Her eyes searched mine, and for a moment, I thought she knew. But she said nothing. That night, I stood by my window, watching the wind move through the trees. I thought about all the birthdays we had shared, all the family photos where we stood side by side, Mark with his hand on my shoulder, smiling like a brother should. How strange it felt now, realizing that smile had been a lie neither of us knew we were living. The next morning, Elise came to see me. She looked tired. "Mark is back," she said. "He wants to talk." I did not want to see him. But something inside me, a mix of anger, confusion, and the need for answers, made me agree. When he arrived, he did not look like himself. The arrogance was gone. His eyes were darker, tired, as though the truth had stripped something from him too. He sat down across from me in the living room. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Finally, I said, "You knew." He nodded slowly. "I suspected. Not everything, but enough." "How long?" "A few years," he admitted. "I found some old letters in Father's study. I confronted Mother once, but she begged me to let it go. She said it would destroy the family." I felt my chest tighten. "And you still blamed me?" He looked down. I was angry. I thought she was punishing me by changing the will. "I thought she loved you more." His voice broke slightly. I did not know the truth was this ugly. For the first time, I saw something in him I had never seen before. Guilt. Not the kind that comes from being caught, but the kind that comes from understanding too late. We sat in silence. The air between us was thick with all the years of misunderstanding, resentment, and love that had never been spoken. Finally, I said, "You are not the only one who lost something. Mark. I lost the story of who I thought we were." He nodded, eyes glistening. "I know." Mother entered the room quietly, holding a tray of tea. Her hands shook slightly as she placed it down. "You two are talking," she said softly. "That makes me happy." I looked at her, and for the first time I could not see her as just my mother. She was a woman who had made choices. Painful, secretive, human choices. "Why did you keep it from us?" I asked. She sat down slowly. "Because love is complicated. Because I was afraid that telling you would change how you saw each other. How you saw me." Her eyes filled with tears. "I wanted to protect you both. But in protecting, I destroyed the trust I was trying to save." Mark exhaled deeply, rubbing his face. "So what happens now?" Mother looked between us. "Now we live with the truth, and we try to forgive it." There was no dramatic embrace, no sudden reconciliation, just silence. Fragile, uneasy, but real. After they left that evening, I walked through the house alone. Every corner held memories that now felt different. The photographs on the walls, birthdays, holidays, laughter, looked like fragments of a story I no longer belonged to. I picked up one picture from the mantelpiece. It was from the summer we spent at the lake when I was 12. Mark was pushing me on the swing, both of us laughing. Behind the photo, I noticed a faint line of writing, my father's handwriting. It said, "For my children, both born of love, even if love came with mistakes." I stood there, tears sliding down my cheeks. That night, I wrote a letter, not to anyone in particular, but to the truth itself. "You took away my peace, but you gave me clarity. You broke my heart, but you showed me who we really are." When I folded it and placed it in my drawer beside Mother's letter, I realized something quietly profound. The rift in our family was not just a wound. It was also an opening for honesty, for grief, for the possibility of healing, and as painful as it was, I knew this. Sometimes, to truly see your family, you must first watch the illusion of it fall apart. The morning light spilled softly through the curtains, casting long shadows across the room. I sat at my desk, the same one where I had once written school essays, birthday cards, and hopeful letters that were never sent. Now it was a place for truth, the kind that could no longer be ignored. Something inside me had shifted after that conversation. The silence in our home no longer felt protective. It felt suffocating. I needed answers, not half-truths or emotional excuses, but the complete, unvarnished story. So I began searching. It started with Father's old chest in the attic, the one Mother never let anyone touch. The air up there smelled of dust and old paper. I opened the chest carefully, the hinges creaking like they were whispering their disapproval. Inside, I found photographs, receipts, letters, and a small leather-bound journal with Father's initials pressed into the cover. My hands trembled as I opened it. His handwriting was neat and deliberate, the way he used to sign my report cards. The first pages were about ordinary things, work meetings, trips, weather. But then, halfway through, his tone changed. I made a mistake years ago, one that no amount of silence can undo. I froze. My heart began to pound. She never knew the full truth. I told her it was only once, but it wasn't. And now I fear the past will find its way back through her eyes. Our daughter's eyes. I sat back, stunned. My breath caught in my throat. It was confirmation of what I had suspected, that I was not his only child in the way I had believed. That our family had always been built upon something fragile, something half-hidden. As I turned the final pages, I found a folded letter tucked inside. It was addressed to Mother. The seal was unbroken. For a long time I stared at it, debating whether to read it. It was not meant for me, yet everything that had happened had already shattered those boundaries. When I finally opened it, Father's voice seemed to echo in the room. If you are reading this, it means the truth could no longer stay buried. I never meant to hurt you, but I could not live with the lie any longer. She deserves to know who she is. We all do. Do not hide it from her. She carries both of us, our mistakes and our love. Tears blurred my vision. For years, Mother had carried this truth alone. For years, she had looked at me with eyes full of guilt she never explained. I understood now. That evening, I went to her room. She was sitting by the window knitting quietly, her glasses low on her nose. The sunset painted the walls in amber and gold, and for a moment she looked peaceful, almost like the Mother I used to know. I held the journal and the letter in my hands. I found these, I said softly. Her knitting needles froze mid-air. Where? In Father's chest. She closed her eyes for a long moment. Then I suppose you know. I nodded. All of it. Her voice trembled. I wanted to tell you so many times, but I thought it would destroy you. You were just a child when it happened. I wanted you to believe you came from love, not from a mistake. I took a step closer. Maybe it was both. Her eyes filled with tears. It was. The silence that followed was heavy but honest. For the first time in years, there was no pretending between us. Who was she? I asked quietly. A woman your father once worked with, she whispered. It ended long before you were born, but she had a child. Your father never knew about the boy until much later. When he found out, he tried to help in secret. That is why he changed the will. My heart sank. The boy, Mark? She nodded slowly. I felt dizzy. So he knew? No, not at first. But later, when I refused to tell him why the will had changed, he began to suspect. He thought I was punishing him. He did not understand that I was trying to protect you both. Her words hung in the air like smoke, thick, suffocating, impossible to ignore. Everything made sense now. The favoritism, the tension, the strange guilt that seemed to hang in every conversation. I sank into the chair beside her. You should have told us, She reached out, touching my hand. I know, but how do you tell your children that they are bound by a secret that began before they were even born? There was no answer to that. Only the sound of our breathing and the soft ticking of the clock on the wall. After a long pause, she said, "He wanted you to know eventually. He believed truth brings peace. I was not that brave." I looked at her, really looked at her, and saw not a mother who lied, but a woman who had tried to protect her family from the chaos of her own choices. "I forgive you," I said quietly. Her shoulders trembled as she exhaled, a sound that was half sob, half relief. That night, I placed Father's journal and the letter back into the chest, not to hide them again, but to honor them. The truth had finally come to light, and though it burned, it also illuminated everything that had been dark for so long. Later, I called Mark. He answered after the third ring. "I know," I said simply. He was silent for a while. Then softly he asked, "Do you hate me?" "No," I said. "We are both victims of the same lie." He exhaled shakily. "So what do we do now?" "We start again," I said. "This time, with the truth." When I hung up, the house felt lighter, not because everything was fixed, but because nothing was hidden anymore. The truth, as painful as it was, had freed us all in its own quiet way. Standing by the window, I watched the first stars appear in the evening sky. I whispered to the wind, not sure who I was speaking to, my father, my mother, or the child I once was. "You taught me what love isn't," I said softly. "And in that, you showed me what it could be." The truth had been unearthed. And though it hurt, it was finally mine to carry, not as a burden, but as understanding. The days that followed were quiet, almost painfully so. It was as if the house itself was holding its breath, unsure what to do with the truth now that it was finally free. The walls that had once echoed with tension now felt hollow, emptied of secrets but heavy with consequence. Mother and I spoke little after that night. There was nothing left to argue about, and yet there was everything left to feel. She moved through the house like a shadow, slow, careful, and weighed down by years she could never take back. I caught her once in the hallway, standing before Father's photograph. Her fingers traced the edge of the frame. She whispered something I could not hear, her voice cracking with a tenderness I had not seen in years. I realized then that she had loved him, truly loved him, even through betrayal, even through the pain. But love, I was beginning to understand, did not protect us from the cost of blood. The truth had freed me, yes, but it had also demanded a price. Every revelation left a wound that time alone could not close. I visited Mark a week later. The air was cold that morning, the kind of cold that seemed to sharpen every sound. He lived on the edge of town, in a small house that looked lonely but cared for. When he opened the door, he looked uncertain, almost afraid. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then I stepped forward and simply said, "Can I come in?" He nodded. Inside, the house smelled faintly of coffee and sawdust. There were photographs on the shelf, landscapes, sunsets, but no people. He noticed me looking. "I never liked taking pictures of myself," he said softly. "There was always something missing in them." I smiled faintly. Maybe now there doesn't have to be. We sat across from each other, two strangers connected by the same bloodline, by choices we never made. "I used to hate him," Mark said suddenly. "Your father. I thought he was a coward for never acknowledging me, but now I do not know what to think." "He was both," I said. "A coward and a man who tried to make things right. He just did not live long enough to finish it." He looked down, his voice breaking. "Do you ever wonder how different things could have been if we had known sooner?" "All the time," I admitted. But then I remind myself, we cannot rewrite the past. We can only decide what kind of people we become after knowing it. He nodded slowly, and for a brief moment, the silence between us felt peaceful. Before leaving, I gave him Father's journal. "It belongs to both of us now," I said. His eyes glistened. "Thank you." When I returned home that evening, Mother was waiting by the window. She looked fragile, not from age, but from the weight of everything she had carried. "Did you see him?" she asked. "Yes. And? He is kind, confused, but he deserves to know." She nodded, her lips trembling. "I wanted to hate him. I tried to, but every time I looked at him, I saw your father's eyes." Her words broke something inside me. I had been angry at her for so long, for her silence, her pride, her distance. But now I saw her clearly, a woman shaped by pain, doing her best to protect her family from the truth that had already destroyed it. "Mother," I said softly, "you do not have to keep carrying this." Tears welled in her eyes. "How do you let go of something that defined your entire life?" "You forgive it," I whispered, "even if it does not deserve forgiveness." That night, she placed Father's photograph on the mantel, beside one of me as a child. For the first time, the two pictures stood side by side, not as symbols of what was broken, but of what had been survived. Days turned into weeks. The rhythm of life slowly returned, though everything felt different. Quieter, humbler, more fragile. Mother grew weaker as winter set in. I spent most of my time by her bedside, reading to her, holding her hand. Some nights she would wake and whisper, "Do you think he forgave me?" "I think he already did," I would say. "He left you the truth, and that was his way of asking for peace." One evening, as the sun dipped behind the trees, she turned to me with a faint smile. "Promise me something. Anything. When I am gone, do not let this story end in bitterness. You and Mark, you must keep what is left of this family alive." I nodded, fighting tears. "I promise." She passed away 3 days later. The funeral was small and quiet. Mark stood beside me, his presence a strange but comforting weight. We said little, but our silence held understanding, a shared grief that needed no words. As the last of the guests left, I remained by her grave, the cold wind brushing against my face. I whispered, "It is over now." "You can rest," but even as I said it, I knew the truth. It was not over. It would live on in the spaces between us, in the stories we would tell, in the choices we would make differently. Forgiveness, I realized, is not a single act. It is a decision made every day to live without resentment, to remember without bitterness. Blood binds us, but it also tests us. It asks how much pain we can bear in the name of love. That night, as I sat alone by the fire, I thought of everything we had lost and everything we had gained. The truth had cost us dearly, but it had also given us something precious: clarity. I finally understood that family was never about perfection. It was about survival, about holding on even when everything falls apart. The cost of blood was heavy, but it was not without meaning, because in losing so much, I had finally found myself. A year has passed since my mother's funeral, and yet the echoes of that winter still linger in the quiet corners of my home. Some mornings I still expect to hear her soft footsteps in the hallway or the faint clinking of her teacup in the kitchen. But the house remains still, wrapped in a silence that feels less like absence and more like peace. The world outside has changed, the seasons have circled back again, and life has continued its quiet rhythm. But inside, something within me has settled. The storm that once tore through my family has passed, leaving behind a kind of calm I never knew I could feel. I visit the old house sometimes, the one where everything began. The garden, though overgrown, still carries the scent of my childhood: lavender, roses, and rain-soaked soil. The gate creaks the same way it used to when Father came home from work. The air feels softer here now, as if time itself has forgiven what we could not. Mark meets me there occasionally. We walk the garden paths, not speaking much. There is comfort in silence when both hearts understand it. He has grown into his peace too, quieter, steadier. We do not talk about the past as much anymore, because we no longer need to. The truth, once so heavy, has found its place in the background of who we are. One afternoon, he brought me a photograph. It was of our father, smiling, younger, standing beside a car I remembered from my childhood. I found it in one of his old boxes, he said. Thought you should have it. I took the photograph and held it for a long time. There was something almost poetic about it, this frozen moment of happiness, untouched by all that came after. I think he would have wanted us to forgive him, I said softly. Mark nodded. And each other. That night after returning home, I placed the photograph on my mantel beside Mother's. For the first time, they stood together again, side by side, as if the years of silence and pain between them had finally dissolved into something gentler. I lit a candle and watched the flame flicker. It danced in the reflection of the glass frame, illuminating their faces with a soft glow. The past no longer felt like a wound. It felt like a story, one that had been lived, endured, and finally understood. Forgiveness had not come easily. It was not a grand gesture or a single decision. It was quiet, arriving slowly through nights of reflection and mornings of remembering without bitterness. I had learned that forgiveness is not about forgetting what happened. It is about releasing the need to keep reliving it. I often think of the phrase my father used to say when I was young. Peace is not the absence of pain. It is the acceptance of it. At the time, I never truly understood what he meant, but now I do. Peace had found me not because everything was mended, but because I had stopped trying to control what could never be changed. Sometimes I walk by the cemetery where they rest. I bring flowers, not out of duty, but out of love. I tell them what has happened since they left, how Mark is doing well, how the house is still standing, how I have started writing again. In those moments, I feel them near me. Not as ghosts, but as quiet presences in the wind, in the warmth of sunlight through the leaves, in the steady beat of my own heart. Life has not become easier, but it has become simpler. I no longer need answers. I no longer need to win. All I need is peace. And I have found it, at last. Last month, I finally opened the letter Father had written before he passed. For years, I could not bring myself to do it. I had been too afraid of what his words might stir in me. But when I unfolded the paper, my hands did not tremble. His handwriting was shaky but familiar. The letter was short. It said, "To my daughter, I am sorry for the silence I left behind. I thought I was protecting you from pain, but I only delayed it. You deserved the truth, and I hope that one day you will see that even my mistakes were made out of love. Take care of your mother, and take care of yourself. You are stronger than you know. Dad." I read it twice, then folded it back carefully and placed it beside the photograph. I did not cry. Instead, I smiled, a small, quiet smile that felt like closure. In the end, the truth had not destroyed us. It had shaped us. It had stripped away illusions, exposed wounds, and taught us what love truly costs. I once believed that family was about shared blood. Now I know it is about shared forgiveness. As I sit by the window now, watching the light fade across the sky, I realize how far I have come. Not from my family, but through them. Every wound, every silence, every betrayal had brought me here, to this quiet moment of understanding. The sun dips low, painting the room in gold. I whisper softly to no one in particular. Sometimes, the betrayal that broke you is what saved you. The candle beside the photographs flickers one last time before it steadies, its flame calm and unwavering, and for the first time in a long time, so am I. If this story touched your heart, take a quiet moment to share your thoughts below. I would love to hear what forgiveness means to you. Remember to like, share, and subscribe for more heartfelt stories about family, healing, and the strength we find in second chances. Thank you for being here and for listening with your heart.